Part of it is intentional. You have to determine, I'm going to be a one-woman man. I'm giving this woman all my affection. I'm going to be faithful to her. You have to pursue her.
Welcome to the Grace Marriage Podcast. I'm Brad Rhodes.
And I'm Marilyn Rhodes. We're here to help you build a marriage that's stronger, more connected, and full of grace.
I'm Rick Dayton, joining Brad and Marilyn as we bring you weekly conversations designed to inspire and equip you to live intentionally in your marriage.
We'll share practical tips, powerful stories, and strategies to help you and your spouse grow closer and thrive together.
So whether you're just starting out or have been married for years, there's always room to grow. Let's do this together. This is the Grace Marriage Podcast.
This is Brad Rhodes with the Grace Marriage Ministry Podcast, and we're thrilled today to have Herschel York on the podcast. Just a short intro. Herschel's a good friend of mine from the first time we talked. It was very apparent we spoke the same dialect. You know, it's like everything Herschel said, I thought, yeah, and everything I said, he's like, yeah. So it's like we've been friends ever since. And Herschel has he's been dean of the School of Theology at Southern Seminary, if I'm saying that right. And then he's also been lead pastor, and he's a speaker. And Herschel's worn a lot of hats all at one time, but in the midst of it, the reason he's on this podcast is because of his marriage to Tanya, and also because of his heart for marriage. So Herschel, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Brad. It is a delight to be with you.
Tell our audience a little bit. You know, some of our audience may know you, some may not. So just tell us a little bit of the Herschel York story.
Yeah, well, I grew up a pastor's son in Western Kentucky, and loved that. A great experience as a preacher's kid. When I was 15, we moved to Detroit. Lived 8 Mile in Van Dyke. Went to the same school Eminem went to, and so I graduated high school up there. Went to Michigan State a couple years. Got called back. I went into ministry really early, and ended up on staff at Ashland Avenue Baptist Church in Lexington, Kentucky, where I met my wife, Tanya. Our first date was my first day on the job in 1980. I was only 20 years old. And, in 13 days, we bought the rings. And we had a whirlwind romance. We're married 6 months later. And so now we've been married 45 years. And during that time, Tanya, first 12 years we were married, I was a full-time student and working full-time. So I've been in ministry since I was 20. I've pastored 3 churches, 2 for a significant chunk of my time. Ended up pastor of Ashland Avenue Baptist Church in Lexington, after I was on staff there, and then went to Southern Seminary on faculty in 1997. Missed pastoring, and Buck Run Baptist Church in Frankfort invited me to become their pastor in 2003 and said, we'll let you do both things. You can stay on faculty at Southern and be our pastor too. That really resonated with me and Tanya. And so we moved to Frankfort, and I've commuted back and forth to Louisville while I pastored Buck Run until 2024. So I became dean at Southern Seminary in 2018. So for several years there, I wore 3 significant hats: full-time professor, dean of the School of Theology, pastor of Buck Run. And I'm shedding jobs now. So I'm going to give up being, I walked away from Buck Run as pastor in 24, still a member there. And I'm going to end my time as dean in July 31 of 26. And then I'm going to remain a professor for a few more years. Not sure exactly how long, but
let's back up a little bit. So you met Tanya, and you just kind of quickly said 13 days later you're buying the ring. So what was it about Tanya, or just what happened? Because but that's not the typical course.
No, it's not. I had heard about her. So a lot of my family were members at Ashland Avenue. I had cousins that were members there, and they'd actually told me about her, and they were all enamored with her. She was absolutely stunningly beautiful. And I don't know how to say it other than she's nice. It's, there's this incredibly gorgeous woman who is just effervescent and kind to everybody. I'd seen no one like her. And we met, man. My trial weekend there at Ashland Avenue, I met her, and we just really hit it off. So my first day on the job there, like I said, we went out that night, uh, and it was just pretty instant sparks. I wasn't interested in dating, I was 20, but I was a mature 20 and had a full time job there. They provided me a house, and I was ready to settle down. And I laid it out for her. I said, "Here's what I think the Lord's doing with my life." And I said, "I don't know. Does that sound all right to you? Because if it doesn't, there won't be a second date." And she just said, "I'm in."
Wow,
And
that's well,
man, we pretty much spent every free moment with each other after that. And when I told my new pastor, whose staff I was on, he about freaked out.
yeah, yeah,
You can understand that. And I did. And I told him, I said, "Hey, Brother Range," I said, "I get how that looks. I mean, I really do." I said, "But look at my life. There's nothing flighty about me. I mean, I was a straight A student at a full tuition academic scholarship to Michigan State, and prior to coming to Ashland Avenue. And I said, there's nothing flighty about me. I'm dead serious about this." And I said, "I'm so convinced it's the will of God that I'm willing to tell you I'm going to marry her, but I won't do it until you say it's okay. And when you say it's okay, I'll marry her." So I said, "If you and Miss Range would allow us to have as much time with you as we can, so you get to see us together and we get to spend time with you, when you say it's all right, we'll do it." And 3 months later, he said, "You need to marry her."
yeah.
And three
That's
months after that, we did.
well, that is awesome. Well, what we do is we try to help people do marriage ministry well. We help churches do marriage ministry well. We help couples do marriage ministry well. And really the primary piece of marriage ministry is your own marriage. I mean,
That's
because
right.
so what I want to start the question is you've lived a very busy life,
Right.
but how have you maintained a vibrant relationship with Tanya that's attractional, that's kept the life alive, that you guys have continued affection for one another in the
We
midst of
do.
all that busyness? How's that managed to take place?
Uh, so much of it, part of it is intentional. I mean, you have to determine, I'm going to be a one woman man. I'm giving this woman all my affection. I'm going to be faithful to her. And you have to pursue her. She in turn did that back. There were times, well, we're like everybody else. We struggled. There were times, and I'm not joking when I tell people I've never once compared another woman, uh, favorably to Tanya. I've never compared her unfavorably to another woman. As far as I'm concerned, she is the pinnacle of womanhood. So my struggle has not been wanting another woman. My struggle has been wanting aloneness. And there have been times I just didn't want to fool with another human being. I would rather be alone. I would, just selfishly do my own thing. And the Lord had to show me that aloneness was as much out of his will for me as another woman, because he didn't give me aloneness, and he didn't give me another woman. He gave me a wife named Tanya. And that was my calling. And so we've had to work at it. We've had to, when we catch ourselves drifting, we got to bring ourselves back. When we get in especially busy times, we have to carve out time for each other, and we've done that pretty relentlessly. One of our key things is we keep something on the calendar that is going to be time just for the two of us, that she doesn't have to share me with anybody else. We at this very recording, we just got back from a week in the Florida Keys, just the two of us, little house we rent down there, totally private. Uh, we don't know anybody down there. We're not really looking to meet anybody down there. We just go, and we spent the week together, and it was glorious. And I'm 45 years in with her, and just love being with her. We enjoy each other immensely. She is the person I admire most, the person I like to be with the most. And again, we've had to work at that. We've had to cultivate that. Yeah, you want to stay interesting to the other person. There have been times I have felt her displeasure, and I've got to get to the heart of it. Well, what do I need to work on? And then sometimes she's had to admit, no, discontent lies in me. It's not you.
Yeah.
We've had to talk about those things
Well,
and really work on them.
with your busyness, because I find we always say at Grace Marriage that time is a container a marriage grows in. So, like a primary element of marriage ministry is trying to get people to spend time on their marriage because,
Right.
you've heard it said, what you focus on and spend time on is what grows, and what you don't
Right.
is what dies. How were you able to continue to find time for your marriage when there were so many demands on your time with church, seminary, and dean?
Well, you just have to say, I would make time, uh, if I were sick, I'd make time to go to the doctor and get well. If I had a project I'd committed to, I'd make time to do it. Well, this is that significant a thing. You can't put this on the back burner and everything else on the front and expect that it's going to be healthy. And so in those seasons, like I said, we've always tried to keep it something on the calendar at the end of, this is the end of our semester. And we were on the plane the day of graduation. We had graduation that morning. We were on a plane to the Florida Keys that
Hmm.
afternoon, and we planned that. We planned that a year in advance, actually. We booked
Hmm.
that and reserved that. And we look at those seasons and say, okay, it's going to be incredibly busy here, so let's carve this out.
Yeah.
And we do that well in advance.
Now, it's obvious when you speak, when I talk to you, you always speak about Tanya in such high regard. The pinnacle
Mm,
of womanhood, the way you see her beautiful inside and out.
yeah.
Um, how have you cultivated it? Because you see most couples, that starts out the case, or they wouldn't want to marry him. But then fast forward 2 or 3 years, that's not the case. So how has that been something you and Tanya have maintained? Because I know she sees you the same way. How have y'all maintained that and grown that and not followed the typical course?
Well, I think both of us, both things are true. We want to see the other in that way, and I think we discipline our minds to. And then each of us wants to remain that for the other person. I don't want it to be. I don't want her to have to work at it too hard. I want to be an admirable person. I want to be the guy she wants to be with more than anybody else. So that's on me to be that kind of a person. And we talk about it, and we've talked about those times. And we're very transparent with people about those struggles. When I was pastoring Ashland Avenue in Lexington, one time it was really a tough time. We were turning a big ship around when I became pastor. And like one time she came forward during the invitation at the end of the sermon and she said, I don't like these people. And she said, I've lost my joy. And I was like, well, darling, okay, we need to talk about this. Probably not right here, right now, but we need to get into it. And we've had those moments too, as wonderful as it is. Again, we've really had to work at it and discipline ourselves. And in those moments, like in that event, I remember when we talked about it, I realized I had stolen from my wife. I had robbed her of that joy. I had gotten so caught up in ministry and turning that church around that I was neglecting her and was giving her cause to resent ministry and people. And again, when we talk about that, both of us see there are things, I don't get to do that. It's not an option for me to make you feel like you're my second commitment behind Jesus instead of my first.
Yeah,
And, we've had to work on it.
well, I think Tim Keller said, if anything comes ahead If anything comes ahead of your marriage other than Jesus, your marriage will slowly die over time.
Yeah,
Would you agree?
that's
Would
right.
you agree with that?
I absolutely would. I mean, you're always going to move toward whatever you focus on. And, if you're focusing on your marriage and you're going to move toward it, you're going to get closer. If you're focused on other things, you're moving toward whatever that other thing is, but that means away from your marriage.
Yeah, and,
And
go ahead. I'm sorry, Horst. Didn't mean to
well,
interrupt.
I just say, everything else in my life pretty much, I can get another church, I can get another job, uh, I can get another house, uh, but I can't get another Tanya.
Mhm.
I get one shot at being her husband, and that has to have the priority. And, we raised two wonderful sons, both of them in ministry. But man, they grew up and they left home. And if you've made your children the primary focus, then you're left sitting across the table from a stranger going, what do we do now? And, we intentionally tried not to do that with our kids. They felt very loved and very secure, but they always knew they weren't the top of the pecking order in our home. And I've told that with every church that, there's not, one of the things I had to realize is that there's not an inherent conflict in being a pastor and being a husband, because God called me to both things. So there can't be an inherent conflict. There might be times when that you feel time pressure, but they can't be inherently contradictory to each other. There's a way to do both of them because God called me to do both of them. So then it becomes just, okay, Lord, I want to make myself totally available to you. What is my best move in this situation? How do I honor your calling on my life in both of these things? But there was no question which one came first, because, I'm no longer pastor at Buck Run. They're doing great without me. I mean, not just okay, they're doing great without me. Uh, and I'm incredibly happy about that. That's as it should be. And and man, I get to spend more time with Tanya. She travels with me a lot now as I travel and speak. Uh, we're doing more ministry together, I think, than we've ever done in some ways. And that, that hasn't been hard because of what we built into marriage before this juncture. And, again, in the not too distant future, a few years down the road, I'm going to retire from even teaching. And I don't dread that. I see that as more time with her.
Hmm.
So, at every stage of life, every one of those junctures, other stuff has changed, but my commitment to her has not. In fact, it's ratcheted up, I would say.
Yeah, and if you're in ministry, the irony is that actually having a vibrant, good marriage, managing your household well, it's actually a qualification for your job. I mean, I heard
None of
one pastor told me, he's talking about how much he works and that's having his marriage. I said, I think you're working so hard as a minister. I don't think you're qualified to be one. I think you might want to resign because you're not even qualified. Because if you're not setting
That's right.
if you're in ministry and you're not setting the example on how to love a woman well, in my view, you probably shouldn't be in ministry if you're married.
Well, I don't think that's just your view. I think that's what the Bible says. And, I mean, it gives your church the right to examine your marriage and your family.
Mhm.
And so, this, when I hear people resent life in the fishbowl and all that, in ministry, I'm like, well, you need to take that up with the Lord, because he gave your church the right to see that. And if you're doing it right and doing it well, it is you. Well, I would say, outside of the word of God, it is my primary means of leadership, uh, because people in my church say, I'm going to listen to this guy because I see what he has at home. I see what he has with his wife, and that's what I want. And so I'm going to listen to what he has to say. I mean, if they see you and your wife don't even get along, don't even like each other, I mean, you might be able to tell them all about the tribulation period and 144,000 and all that, but man, they don't really care because it ain't working at home.
Mhm.
But when they see this vibrant marriage and you're happy, man, they're like, we want that. How do you get
Mhm.
that? And that has been I think the key to my leadership in every church I've pastored.
Yeah, and just to people when they don't talk about you without talking about Tanya.
It's
You know,
true.
because like Pete Scazzaro said, you lead out of your marriage. So in marriage ministry, it's primary. My board tells me regularly, to whatever degree what Grace Marriage teaches, if it's beyond what you're experiencing in your own marriage, you're a hypocritical ministry. So
Right.
they'll talk to me about my own marriage. And one thing I want to back up, you mentioned earlier, when I asked you about how you cultivate affection toward one another, one thing you said was you discipline your mind. So you
Right.
focus on the positive Tanya, her beauty, her characteristics, which creates more affection, adoration. But two, you said if she's not digging you, you don't complain about her not digging you. You just try to make yourself more diggable.
That's right.
So like when guys tell me I don't even feel like my wife likes me, I don't feel like this, I don't like this. I'm like, quit whining and make yourself more likable. So how would you speak to somebody who says, well, I don't, I just, I want to be better in marriage ministry and be better in my own marriage, but I don't even feel like my wife likes me very much.
Yeah. Well, then the question is why? Now, is it possible that you can be in the will of God and doing everything right and your spouse just not be responsive? Yes, that's possible, but it's the minority. It's not normally the way it works. Usually people respond to your effort, to your investment, to your kindness, to your grace. So, like I like being alone. So I've had to work on being engaging, being, I grew up out in the boonies all by myself in Christian County, Kentucky. I didn't even have kids to play with because, no kids lived near me. I mean, I was out in the country. So I got very content being alone, and I can sit for an evening and totally in my mind have every conversation I need. Guess what? Marriage doesn't work that way.
No.
So I have had to say, you don't get to do that. That is not what God's called you to do. That's not what I signed up for. So I've had to force myself to be engaging, to be conversational. And when we first got married, I discovered she expected me to use basic manners in the house. Like, if I step on her foot to say, "Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry." And I just sort of thought, well, that, I didn't mean to do that. But, I learned, no, she has certain expectations. So I had to really plug in and say, okay, then it's on me to meet those expectations within my ability. What I don't get to do is say, well, that's crazy, I'm not going to do that, when it's really a reasonable thing. She's not asking me to fly to the moon. She's asking me to be nice, to use manners, to talk to her over dinner, to not be looking at my phone all the time. I mean, those are things totally within my power, and it's the right thing to do. I mean, you just look at the way Jesus engaged people, and he was always present. He was noticing people. And if Jesus could do that for everybody he came in contact with, I should be able to do that with the wife God gave me as my partner for life in ministry.
Yeah, and I can tell you, I've done it both ways. When I first got married, I prioritized the law practice and other things over Maryland. And then when somebody got a hold of me and showed me to do it differently, it's night and day life experience when you're enjoying it with your best friend in the world. And so,
It is.
so, so I want to encourage you, if you're listening, you have an opportunity. You have an opportunity to draw people to Jesus by having such an attractive relationship. And you've got an opportunity to impact other marriages. So if you're listening today on the Grace Marriage Podcast, go to gracemarriage.com, scroll down where it says, I want to know more. And we would love you to start a Grace Marriage group in your home. All you got to do is hit that I want to know more, get some from it. We'll help you spin it up, get started. You can impact your own marriage and people around you. Because at Grace Marriage, we want to totally change the paradigm on how marriage is done. What Dr. York is explaining, we want that to be normal. I mean, you enjoy your wife, you date, you spend time together, you have a blast, God gets glory. We don't want that being the cute exception anymore. We wanted to be that the Christian norm. So Dr. York, thank you so much for being on the podcast, and we'll come back and talk to you a little bit more about marriage ministry in the church, if that'd be okay.
I look forward to it.
Hey, God bless. Thank you for joining us on the Grace Marriage Podcast. We really hope you're feeling inspired to take intentional steps to grow in your marriage.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with a friend. Your support helps us spread the message of grace and reach even more couples.
And if you have a moment, please leave us a review. Your feedback means a lot to us and helps others discover the podcast.
To learn more about how you can grow in your marriage, visit us at gracemarriage.com. Keep building stronger, grace-filled marriages.
We'll see you next week on the Grace Marriage Podcast. Until then, keep growing in grace.